So my recording on Michael Newby actually went 15:31, 1 second over my 15-minute and 30-second cutoff point. And so I hope it gets printed up because that's 15 minutes worth of work. And it's about Michael Newby. The whole thing was basically about Michael Newby. Just real quick, 2009, Michael Newby, 19-year-old, got shot in January 2009. Shot 5 times, 3 times was shot in the back, and he wasn't violent. He didn't pose a threat. They said that there was a gun and some marijuana on him, and so he, could have been dealing. And they said it was a bad drug deal gone bad. The dude was plain clothes, shot him in the back. And it's over marijuana charges. So the war on drugs is clearly to blame in this situation. It doesn't solve crimes. It doesn't help people. It just kills innocent small business entrepreneurs is all it did in this situation. If it's true, I wouldn't put it past the police to plant either one of those things. A throwaway gun that they had, an unregistered throwaway gun, little handgun, little pistol, which I heard like all officers carry one, and some marijuana. Just put some marijuana on them. So that was Michael Newby. That happened in January 2009. It was the 10th anniversary of the Desmond Rudolph shooting in 1999. So 10 years later, we still see the same problems that's happened in Louisville. It was also under Robert White, Chief Robert White. Okay, so Chief Robert White, I got some write-up actually about him. Chief Robert White was the police chief of Louisville, Kentucky since the merger. The Louisville, they did what a lot of other cities did, including Lexington. They merged. So they put the county governments and the city governments together. And when they did that, that made essentially Louisville its own political entity, its own nation state that could control its own affairs. So its own state power, its own Leviathan, its own thing that's going on here. I'm sure Frankfurt has some pull with the budget, but they don't have any say-so with what actually goes on. It's the mayor and the police chief. Those are the two most powerful folks in the city. So the mayor and the police chief. Robert White, he came in 2003 during the merger. From 2003 to 2011. In 2012, he goes to Denver, Colorado, where marijuana is legalized. So he goes to a place where marijuana is legalized, and so that has to be a big breath of relief. Michael Newby gets shot over marijuana, so you go from one city where you're getting shot because you have marijuana on you, versus going to a city where everybody does it. It's out in the open. It's in coffee shops and anybody can buy it. So that has to be a great relief to Chief Robert White that he doesn't have to keep participating in this failed, stupid prohibition war on marijuana. So okay. Robert White, he goes, the worst day of Robert White's career was about 6:30 in the morning on March 23rd, 2005. Officer Peter Grignon responded to a call of a hit and run, and when confronting two teenagers he found near the scene, 17-year-old Travis Ballard pulled out a handgun and shot Grignon in the head before turning the gun on himself. So, that's a crazy situation. It was a call of a hit and run, and then they confront the gentleman, and then 17-year-old dude freaks out. I don't know if he was saying he was guilty, shoots the cop, then shoots himself. And he says that was the worst day of his life, and that's a horrible situation. The protesters gathered outside the Louisville Metro Police headquarters, angry about a racially charged police shooting left the 19-year-old dead a few days earlier. So this is 2004. 2004, that would have been, I don't know. I think Michael Doobie was 2009, right? So, okay, 2004, I'm not for sure, but it's, and it matters, I need to find out who that is, but he's on the day, and there's a 19-year-old that's dead. Okay, there's several 19-year-olds that are dead. So, I mean, you had Michael Newby was 19 years old, and Clifford Lewis was 18 years old. That was 2001, which was before Chief Robert White. So I'm not sure who this person that they're protesting in 2004, but they have peaceful. He's monitoring a peaceful demonstration. Things get disorderly. Police and riot gear are called out. Rocks are being thrown through White's office window. Rather than heed the advice of his commanders to stay inside, White came out to meet the crowd at a neutral location, and he spent 2 hours talking to them. It's that willingness to work with the community that many point to as White's strength during his tenure in Louisville, Kentucky. So I'd like to know who that actually was. Who was killed? Who was throwing windows through the rocks through the police chief's window over what person's murder? Okay, there's Robert Abernathy, Adrian Reynolds. You have a whole number of them. You have Leon Brackens, Desmond Rudolph, Clifford Lewis, James Taylor. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not sure which one it is, but it kind of shows his character. He's confronted with this demonstration, and he goes out and he talks to him for about 2 hours. People say it's the best thing for the community we've ever had. Blaine Hudson's history of Louisville, Kentucky ends with his face at the very end. That was a great achievement by Louisville, the great Robert White. And he left in 2012, and since then we've had Steve Conrad, who's been the police chief of Louisville. And Steve Conrad he's no good. He's no good. He's dishonest, and he doesn't care about truth or justice. And that's unfortunate that we had someone who is willing to listen to folks versus someone that isn't willing to listen whatsoever. The fact that Robert White went to Denver, Colorado does say something about Robert White himself, about where he stands on the whole issue on the war on drugs. Robert White came out of D.C. He worked in Greensboro, North Carolina, where the first sit-ins happened. D.C. is predominantly black population. So he's a reasonable man. I remember him talking to us in class at U of L it was a state representative, a state senator. So he's teaching the Kentucky history, or the government, local government and state government class, and he comes in and he talks to us about what it is that police officers have to go through, and he sounded really reasonable, and I really enjoyed the talk. I wish I knew more about him. I'd been more open about some of the questions that I would have liked to have asked him. I didn't realize he was that open, okay? He basically said that you can't police the whole city. You only got 1,000, a couple thousand officers. Any city of 1 million, so you can't be everywhere at all places. So what you do is you maintain a presence all over the place, and so that's what he did. He's increased the presence everywhere, so everybody knows what's going on. He seems to be more fair and reasonable. He seems like he considers the case instead of just kind of covering the police officer's butt. He actually considers the case and actually sees if the case is, if it warrants the shake up, the protest that it warrants it. He doesn't always come on the same side as Louis Coleman, and I think that would be a better Board of Aldermen, get that citizen police review ordinance passed. It was passed, but the mayor had vetoed it, which is horrible. Like, that's horrible. Why would you veto the citizen complaint panel? So they could have changed the Mayor Armstrong, instead of just firing the police chief, he could have actually substantially changed how things work in Louisville. You could have had a citizen panel which oversees any police brutality cases. So if there are charges of police brutality, you have a citizen panel who has the power to investigate and take a look and see what's going on. And you should have the power to investigate, I would say arrest, and definitely, subpoena. So why wouldn't you give them that power? Right. So that's Robert White, right? Robert White, the ex-police chief of Louisville. The James Taylor, I talked about him before. He was the one with he was sitting down on a chair with handcuffed, and he had either box cutters or a little knife, and they shot him 15 times or so. And James Taylor, the autopsy report said the bullets lacerated Taylor's heart, lungs, spleen, diaphragm, and liver, fractured a rib in Taylor's left shoulder. Greathouse said Taylor was so severely injured that he would have died even if there had been an operating room next door, the coroner said. So he was shot 15 times, right, at point blank range. And 15 times. 15 fucking times. 15 times. and they said he was dead right there on the spot immediately. So as soon as James Taylor was murdered by Michael O'Neill, he was dead immediately. Michael O'Neill shot James Taylor 12 times, point blank range, riddled his body with bullets. He died immediately. The report was given to the FBI. The FBI was investigating it. Reverend Louis Coleman, executive director of Justice Resource Center, said the preliminary results show the shooting was an execution of an individual with his hands behind his back. And it's horrific. Aubrey Williams, who was co-counsel for Taylor's estate, said Taylor couldn't have charged the officers with the knife unless he come at them sideways, and if he was doing that, Williams said the bullets should have entered Taylor's side rather than the front of his body, which that's 100%. So now you have Adrian Reynolds. Okay, Adrian Reynolds was eventually awarded his estate. His family eventually was to get $350,000. So they wouldn't pay you off if there wasn't some guilt to them. So I don't know if they forced their hand, if the jury awarded them that much, or if they had settled out of court. But they had settled out of court for $350,000, which is one of the biggest amounts so far. The jury trial of Adrian Reynolds. Adrian Reynolds is the victim. Adrian Reynolds was killed, and he was murdered by Timothy Barnes. Timothy Barnes comes, he's a jailer, right? So this murder happens in the jail, in the Louisville County Jail, right here in Louisville, right? So in cell 6. So in cell 6, Adrian Reynolds was murdered by Timothy Barnes. And the trial was held in Fayette County because there was so much publicity on it. They didn't know if they would actually get an impartial jury here in Louisville. It took them 2 days in Fayette County to get an impartial jury. There was like 11 women, 5 men, so it was like 17 people. Then Adrian Reynolds was the victim. Timothy Barnes was the jailer, one of 5 jailers. So Timothy Barnes, along with 5 other people, goes in there and kicks the shit out of Adrian Reynolds' ass. And they're beating up on Adrian Reynolds. The Timothy Barnes, he's a hulk of a man. So Timothy Barnes is huge. He's a big man with a size 13 boot, and he stomps his boot on top of Adrian Reynolds' head, and that's when he died. It was with a blunt force trauma of a head injury. And Adrian Reynolds, he pleaded for his life. Now I remember, I was falsely accused of jaywalking. But for jaywalking, I got punched in the face, my nose broken, $28,000 in medical bills, and there's a lot of, U of L went and fixed me that night, and I got sent to the prison with my nose all broken, and I'm bleeding everywhere. So while that had happened, I was in there, and there was they roughed me up. They molested me and they roughed me up. So they're all rude to you. None of them helps you. They're all real shitty to you. And there's the lady was behind the counter, and they're all real shitty. She's like, what you gonna do? And just talks to you like you're a fucking asshole. And if you don't accept her talking to you like you're total shit, right? So I had to go several times up to the window, and then finally she, put in whatever information. She didn't even help anyways. It was the other lady in the middle. So anyways, I don't know any of their names, so I'm just talking about these images of, men, women, all white men and women. I don't recall any black or brown folks. They could have been. So they released me on my own recognizance, and I'm getting out. And after maybe about 6 hours or so, it's like 3 a.m. in the morning. And when I get released on my own recognizance, they tell everybody who is getting released to line up on the wall, right? One last oppressive act for all you people who are about to get free. Let's see what you do. And they told us to get up on the wall, and they've already checked us. We're already in the jail, so we're having to put our hands up against the wall, and they were going to pat us down. And I was talking to this dude right next to me, and I was explaining to him what had happened what had happened to me. And while my hands was on the wall, I was explaining it to him, and as I was talking, there was 2 jailers that was sitting on a bench, and one of them had overheard me. And so when he heard me talking, I guess he assumed I was talking to myself, and he was like, are you okay, man? Are you doing okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm okay. And then he didn't like how I responded to him like that, and he was like, well, what are you doing? And I was like, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm working. And I was like, working? Looks like you just sitting there making fun of me. And when I said that, like immediately he got up and I was totally right. That's exactly what he was doing. And he got up and he gathered his boys over there, and then like he got one of his boys to frisk me. And then when he was telling him, he was like, "Hey, do this." And so when he was frisking me, he touched my chode. He touched right underneath my nut sack. And when they were doing this shit, like I'm sitting there, like it's fucking bullshit. It's fucking bullshit. I had to go through this, but when I'm sitting there, saying like, "You touch me, you're the gay person," I think they're trying to think like they're gonna get me to go gay or some shit, but they're the ones exhibiting homosexual tendencies. And after they did this, well, I'll tell you more coming up.